For decades and decades, tube amps have been the heart of guitar tone. So why are so many guitar players ditching them for digital tube amps? I think I can speak for many guitar players out there, especially those my age, when I say I love tube amps. And I think there's a few reasons why I love tube amps, and I'm sure these could be the same reasons why you might love them as well. Number one, the tone. Now, at this point, tube amps have been around for almost 100 years, but when I think of tone, I think of the bands I was listening to in the late 90s, early 2000s when I learned how to play guitar. Bands like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Rage Against the Machine, later the Foo Fighters, Blink-182, those are the guitar tones that I gravitate towards. And if you think about it, that tone from the 1930s all the way to now, it shaped rock and roll, blues, metal, and all the guitar genres of music. The second reason why I love tube amps is the feel and dynamic. I'll never forget the first time I plugged into a tube amp. It was a Marshall. It was not mine, but it was a teacher at my school. He had a Marshall stack. And the first time I played it, there was just something about it. It felt huge. It was loud and it had so much body, and there's just nothing like it. No solid state amp can produce that body and that girth of a tube amp. And another reason why I love tube amps is I love the look of them. When I was a kid, it was my dream to have a Marshall head and a 4x12. And the first time I got it, I couldn't stop looking on stage. Actually, even to this day, when I'm playing a show, when I have all my gear set up on the stage, I have to take a look at the stage and be a nerd about it because I love how these amps look. And later when I started buying combo tube amps, I still love the aesthetics. I love the Vox AC15, which I have right here. I have many videos about that. I love the Marshall Origin 20, which is right behind me as well. And I love my EVH 5150 Iconic. However, owning tube amps also has its drawbacks. For one, it's a very temperamental thing. It's old technology. You can have your amp dialed so good at your practice space or in your home studio, but then when you go to a gig, you'll have the same settings and it will not sound the same. There's something about it, I don't know what it is. There's always so much variables when you're playing tube amps. Another drawback about tube amps is because it's old technology, they tend to go down. You have to replace the tubes, you have to get them serviced. And you could be out of your amp for, weeks or months, and it could be costly. And another drawback with tube amps, especially if you're an old man like myself, they're friggin' heavy. And carrying a Marshall head with a 4x12 cab, man, I have zero desire to roll those into dive bars. So. So why are people making the shift to digital? Well, in my opinion, and one of the most important reasons is portability. This is the Strymon Iridium. It is no bigger than your standard Boss pedal. This pedal contains the 3 amps that I use the most. This is the HX Stomp, one of my favorite pedals ever. It contains 40 or 50 amps, 100 plus effects. This thing can go on a pedal board and power your whole setup. I have a video about my pedal board, which is centered around the HX Stomp. I'll link it up here. Go check it out after you're done watching this video. The second reason why I think people are shifting to digital is because of consistency. As I mentioned earlier in the video, tube amps are very temperamental and you just never know what you're gonna get with them. They could go down very easy and they always sound different in different rooms. Whereas digital modelers like the Strymon or the HX Stomp, once you dial in your tone, that's it. It's gonna sound the same every single time, wherever you are, whether you're recording in the studio or if you are playing live. That's why I love these pedals because it's set it and forget it. I'm one to not over tweak tones, and once I get my tones, that's it. And I like to just work and record and set up and play super fast. I am not much for tweaking tones. Another great reason why people go digital is the versatility. The first time I ever understood what amp modelers did was when my friend lent me his Pod XT. It was a floorboard system. I didn't understand amp modeling until then. The beautiful thing about that pedal was it came with a book. And once you flip through it and you understand what the model's name, it is basically a history lesson in all the great amps ever made, all the great tube amps ever made. And if you're not familiar with any of these, I'm gonna link it down in the descriptions below. This is not a sponsored post, but I think Line 6 makes a beautiful handbook on the models that they have in the HX Stomp or whatever modeler you're using. And it's a history lesson in pedals and amps, and that's what I love about these amp modelers is the versatility. Another great reason to go digital, especially if you are a dad like myself that have young kids, is the headphone jack. You can practice and play your Marshall stack at night with headphones. I think that was a game changer. And the beautiful thing about that, Strymon Iridium also has the headphone jack. So these two, I can't recommend enough for silent at night practicing. And I think one of the coolest things about digital modelers, especially for beginner guitar players, is you get to try what these amps sound like. So I didn't get to play a Vox AC30 until well into my guitar journey, but I was able to try it before I bought one. I was playing it on my Pod X3 before I physically bought the amp, and that's the beautiful thing about that. So if you are starting your guitar journey and you want to play a JCM 800 and maybe you don't have $2,000 or however much it is to spend on a JCM 800 or a JCM 900, you can spend a couple $100s. You don't have to get these modelers, but there's a ton of modelers out there and they all do the same thing. They can model the amps that you want to try out. You can try those amps. So as a new guitar player, man, like this is the best time to play guitar in my opinion, because you have access to all these beautiful, historic, and amazing sounding amps. What is the catalyst of change? Well, I think technology has just vastly advanced. Amp modelers these days all pretty much sound so good and so close to the real thing. And a cool thing about digital modeling these days is the amp captures, where I don't actually have a Tonex or a Quad Cortex or a Kemper, but these devices can actually capture your own amp and rig, and I think that's a phenomenal thing. I'm thinking about trying the Tonex this year. Let me know in the comments if you have one of those and whether I should try one. Because amp modelers are so good these days, we see a ton of pro touring bands taking them out on the road, and it's no secret that touring has just increased in price where it's not profitable for most artists unless you're like Taylor Swift, and taking the least amount of gear is just the smartest thing to do. And taking an amp modeler like a Kemper or a Helix or any of those is just such a great solution to lower your cost. And to add to that, carrying a pedal board which contains this compared to a 45-pound head and a 45-pound 4x12 is just a no-brainer to me. Like I said earlier in the video, I want nothing to do with carrying or rolling in amps at this point in my career. Also, from a touring or a gigging point of view, it's easier for a sound engineer in front of the house to mix a band correctly for the venue when they are all plugged into the PA and you don't have all this stage volume. I used to play the Marshall stack, as I mentioned, and if you weren't standing close to it, if you're kind of far away from it, you wouldn't hear what you were playing. So you'd go there and you turn it up. And that was always a constant battle, especially with me. And I'm sure a lot of people, is that you can't hear yourself over the drums or the bass, and you go there and you turn it up. And that kind of screws the mix for the front of the house. So playing a digital amp modeler where you're just plugged into the PA and you're in direct monitor, or if you have in-ears, probably is an easier time for your mix engineer, and your overall mix for the crowd probably sounds way better. Question is, can digital replace real amps? Now, this is a loaded question. Now, in terms of tone, does a digital amp modeler compare to the real thing? Well, no, it doesn't. But it's so close, like so close. I say 90-95%. When I got the Strymon Iridium, I actually paired it up against my Vox AC15. I know it's not the same amp, but it's kind of does the Vox thing. And man, this pedal is very, very close. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to make a video where I shoot this Strymon Iridium with my Vox AC15. In my opinion, the true difference between digital and tube amps is the player feel, how it feels for you to play. I know it's a super selfish thing, but it is different to play a Vox AC15 in a room, hear it and hear the harmonics and hear the girth and hear the body and how big it is compared to playing a pedal. There's nothing like playing a tube amp and you feel the air that's moving, and that's the sound and that's the body that's missing in tube amps. And let's talk about IRs and captures for a second. This technology, I think this technology is so phenomenal that you could capture your own speakers, your own mics, your own rig. I love technology, and I think this is one of the most beautiful and innovative things about digital modelers the last decade or so is IRs and captures. And I think it's just gonna get better in the next few years or decade. So to answer the question, can digital replace real tube amps? For me, no. There's a place for tube amps. I feel that tube amps are kind of like guitars. They're actual instruments. And I almost feel that amp modelers are tools to get me to that job quicker. And amp modelers can never replace tube amps, but man, they are a tool in the toolkit for sure that I use a lot and I go to very often. I want to know what you guys are using, so comment down below. Let me know if you guys are using an amp modeler or if you guys are using a tube amp, and let me know how you use it and what you're using, and recommend something for me that I might not have tried before. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you so much. If you like this video, you might like a video about the Vox AC15, the real tube amp. I'll post it right here. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one. Peace.